All right, we're back for the Monica trial. So many people have the potential of taking the stand today, and obviously I really hope that Baker does, but we will just soon see. Like I've been telling everybody every day for this trial, I'm interested in keeping an eye out for if she looks more done up than she has in the other days, if she's wearing any string rings or anything to that effect. It's going to be interesting knowing that she hasn't seen Baker in so long that I don't know, with her trying to save herself, if she's going to act like she hates him, or since it's been so long, is she gonna have to really fight herself not to be smiling or doing something towards him. And as usual, we will look for tears that have yet to happen yet. All this time, all these people going and testifying, even her daughter, and still no real tears. All right, moving myself to the corner. Will they start on time? Probably not. So, according to everything that the police had collected regarding them talking in jail, the last thing that they saw was in January 21st, 2018. So it's going to be interesting to see if anybody else is able to find more details on if that really is when they never talked again, or have they been doing other things to communicate. And I realized that I thought Robert Baker was only married once before, but it was actually 2 or 3 times that he was married. Good morning. What do you think, Salty? Do you think Robert Baker is going to be testifying today? Yeah, it's supposed to be the defense calling him. Oh, Sarah Boone's at it again. I've been having to check my app that I use to be able to email back and forth with her. I've been waiting for her to somehow get word that I made a video and for her to yell at me. So far, nothing. Yeah. Only helpful for Monica, but I still have hope that maybe he'll flip and say that she had something to do with it, or at least knew about it. All right, so here's a question for you. Do you think both of these pictures are Robert Baker? Or do you think that they resemble each other, but they are not both him? Sean, you say no, not the same person? See, I didn't think so. But, oh,
Good morning.
I'll talk
So
later.
Esther is very loyal. And she said one of the jurors, one of you, requested off early today because of a school matter, which is fine. And what you reported to me is that juror requested 3:30, and all the jurors said, how about 3 o'clock? So who am I to say no? We'll break at 3 o'clock today. You've been very, very patient during this entire trial, and if you can get home a little drier, that's fine. In any event, Detective Roberts, you're still under oath, and the people may continue with strike that. Defense may continue with the cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mrs. Roberts, I think we broke off yesterday talking about the parking lot at Target, and then the surrounding video cameras that were there or not there at the time that the incident took place. You recall that?
I recall that.
Okay. So, is it a fair statement that at the time of the murder, LAPD obtained the video of all the Target cameras that were available at that time?
That is my belief.
And it was only later when it was learned that there was perhaps another camera or cameras that could have been exercised but were had to be within a 30-day period, and they missed that 30-day period.
That's my belief, yes.
And we were talking about Mr. Baker and his presence at the Target, and whether or not he did or did not get into a vehicle that had been parked there by Monica Sementilli. You call that, correct?
Yes.
And you understand that there have been various opinions as to who did or did not, or if anyone got into that car or not.
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained.
Well, were you present or were you aware of Detective Gable's testimony concerning whether or not he was able to observe a person, anyone, entering or not entering or leaving the vehicle driven by Ms. Sementilli?
I wasn't in court on the day that Detective Gable testified.
Okay. And you understand, well, we'll get back to that because there have been other individuals who've asked, experts asked to determine whether or not someone got in or not. And
Sustained.
we'll deal with that. Let me ask you this. You said someone near that vehicle, and it looked to you as if that person got in, correct?
Yes.
Where did that car go following the time it was parked there, which you say included Mr. Baker, in your opinion, in
My
the
opinion.
vehicle? Where did it go then?
It went straight and did almost like a U-turn around the parking area to come down the next lane, and then parked near the back of the parking lot across from the Payless.
Okay. You have that on videotape?
Yes.
Can we see that?
Well, I don't have it on videotape, but I think it's been played with the court.
All right. Let me go by that for now.
Okay.
When you viewed the video,
Yes.
you had complete video, you believe, of Ms. Sementilli when she entered the Target, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Can you describe where her car was when it entered?
Well, enters off of Ventura Boulevard.
Okay.
She enters the parking lot and makes a left turn and then stops almost directly across from the Payless Shoe Store.
Okay. Without beating a dead horse, there's no camera available to have captured that on video.
No, the Target video captures that. It's just hard to make out.
Because it's so
with
far away.
Specificity, yes.
Okay. But you can make out the video.
Yes.
Okay. So assuming for now we both agree at the least that Ms. Sementilli is driving the vehicle, it parks there.
Same objection, Your Honor.
I'm sorry, the same objection mean?
Testimony.
I thought that was part of the question. Continue.
Does the vehicle park there?
No. Well, I wouldn't say park, but it stops there for.
Okay. Wrong word. Stops.
It stops for,
Okay.
I don't know,
And
10,
that's
20
when you
seconds.
say it's very difficult, but you think you believe you see some figure enter the car.
No. Well, yes. It comes across the parking lot in front of the car, and then, yes, I believe the figure goes around the front of the car, gets in the passenger side door.
And then what does the car do?
That's when it repositions to the rear of the parking lot.
Okay. And can you describe the motion of the car then? If we're looking at it, does it go to the right if you're looking from the store to the parking lot, to the right side of the parking lot, left side, back, front?
I guess that would be considered the south side of the parking lot.
Okay.
I don't know, right, left.
And you know that this is the car being driven, you believe, because of the nature of the car by Mrs. Sementilli, correct?
Well, because we see her leave her residence. She said she went to Target at that time. It's
Okay.
consistent with the evidence in the case that that is her arriving at the Target, and also with the cell phone records.
Okay. And she's always admitted and stated when interviewed that she went to Target.
Correct.
Okay. Where does the car go in the Target lot when it leaves that location that you see originally?
Yeah, after being parked a little over 4 minutes, she backs up and repositions to same lane, about middle of the parking lot, other side.
We put up one of the exhibits, 158, which I believe was prepared by you or on your behalf. Can you see that?
It's easier if I can. Yes?
Okay, is Monica's vehicle visible in that, as it's moving along, in that video, I'll call it? Can you see now a vehicle? Which one is hers, would you know?
I hope so. We don't need any more
One that's
repetitive
moving
questions.
down towards us
In the red?
with the red circle around it, yes.
Okay. And it's moving down, and what does it appear to be doing now? Parking?
Parking mid-lot, yes.
Okay. Now, you see her exit the vehicle, is that correct?
Correct.
And she enters the Target.
Correct.
And there are some videos we've seen where she is entering and also leaving the Target.
Yes.
So you have those events memorialized on the video, correct?
Correct.
And then where does she go?
To the Ralphs.
And how does she get there?
She drives the F-150.
Gets back into the F-150, correct?
Yes.
And is she seen leaving the shot, caught by the video cameras?
I'm sorry?
Do the video cameras catch her leaving the store in the Target in the vehicle?
Yes.
So we know how she exits and where she goes.
Yes.
Does the video show anybody exiting her vehicle at any time that she has parked in the lot, gotten in the store, returned to the car, or exited the Target lot?
No, it does not.
And is it seen leaving the Target lot?
Yes.
Is it seen entering the Ralph's store?
Yes.
Okay. So the question then becomes, if in fact, and this is not agreed upon necessarily by all sides,
Again, Your Honor.
Counsel, you notice don't.
if Mr. Baker, you believe, was seen entering the vehicle, correct?
Correct.
When did you see him exit the vehicle?
I did not see him exit the vehicle.
Did you see the vehicle that he was parked in the rear of the Target parking lot, still there when Ms. Sementilli drove her vehicle out of the lot?
No, his vehicle leaves while Miss Sementilli is in the Target shopping.
Okay. Leaves before she leaves.
Yes.
At any time does a video show him exiting Miss Sementilli's vehicle and returning to his vehicle where he's parked at the rear of the Target lot?
It does not, but the way that her vehicle is parked on both occasions, when she reparks and then reparks again, or when she initially parks after that stop and reparks again, I'm not sure you would be able to see somebody exit the vehicle.
You're not sure?
Not sure.
What about walking from the vehicle way back to his parking place? Why wouldn't you see that?
That video is grainy, and as I testified to yesterday, is the farther you get back in there, you can't make out persons, you can make out cars.
Okay. Is it fair to say that you have not been able to identify anybody leaving Miss Sementilli's vehicle and she reparks it and walking back towards the vehicle that was parked by Mr. Baker? You just can't see that.
You can't see that.
Okay. Miss Sementilli leaves, and then eventually, does Mr. Baker's vehicle leave?
Prior to Miss Sementilli leaving.
Okay. She goes to Ralph's. You have a video indicating where Mr. Baker goes following his leaving the Target parking lot.
Yes.
And where is that?
He pulls out of the Target parking lot after that. I don't recall if we catch him in that silver. I don't think we catch him again after that. I don't know which way, whether he went right or left out of the Target parking lot.
And he is in the Nissan Versa?
Yes.
Is it fair to say the next time his vehicle is observed, it's in relation to, well, you tell me, when's the next time that vehicle is picked up by any cameras in the area that happen to show his route?
I don't recall after that.
Okay.
That silver Nissan Versa.
Eventually, it's your belief it's taken or driven to the area of the Sementilli home, and the two joggers get out, come up, commit the crime, and then leave in the Porsche that belongs to Mr. Sementilli, correct?
I'm not sure in the area of the Sementilli home, whether it was half a mile down the road or a block around the road. We don't know that, but eventually, yes, I believe that they come to the Sementilli residence in the Nissan Versa.
Okay, and that's where the murder occurs.
Yes.
All right. We've gone through the time line on those events. Right about 5 o'clock, the Porsche exits the home and leaves going down Queen Victoria Lane and then to Oakdale Boulevard, correct?
Correct.
Eventually, that car is not found until a day or two later, is correct?
Correct. Yes,
Porsche.
correct. The Porsche. Yeah.
Do you know if the Porsche was moved at all from the location where it was eventually found? That is, was there any evidence that the Porsche had been parked initially somewhere else and then moved before it was found by LAPD?
On Khalifa, I have no reason to believe that. I believe there is a witness that actually saw it park or saw it there. And I have no reason to believe that it was moved from that Khalifa location.
Do you have a time from a witness or video as to when the Porsche was actually abandoned at the location where it was found?
I believe there's a witness statement. I don't have it with me, but I believe there was a witness statement.
Okay, and you recall the time that that individual believed he saw the Porsche in the area?
I do not.
It was the next day, correct?
I couldn't say for sure.
You don't know if the Porsche was recovered the same day as the murder or the next
Oh,
day?
I'm. Your question is confusing. I thought you were talking about when did the witness say it was parked.
No, I'm
that
sorry.
I do not recall.
But you know when it was recovered?
Yes,
And when was that?
I believe it was the day after or 2 days after.
Okay. In the meantime, there was some activity with the Nissan Versa, correct?
Objection made.
Rule.
Yes,
And what was that you were able to document?
I wasn't able to document this, but it was information that I learned after I had retired that Christopher Austin was driving the Nissan Versa and was ticketed in it.
When did you first have, you being LAPD if you would, information as to the description of the Versa and or its license plate?
I believe when they received the information from Paula McCollum and then went, I don't know the exact date, but there is paperwork within the investigative documents as to when the detectives determined that that was the car that was used.
Okay, and that was from a third-party acquaintance, girlfriend, however you want to phrase it, of Mr. Baker's name was Paula McCollum, correct?
Correct. She rented the vehicle.
She rented the vehicle the day of the murder and provided it, as far as you know, to Mr. Baker for his use in carrying out this crime, correct?
Well, I'm going to object. That assumes facts, not an evidence.
Sustained.
That Versa had not been rented the day before, as far as you know. Am I correct?
Objection vague as to the day before what?
So a rule.
Day before the murder.
My recollection was it was the day of the murder.
Okay. And that was obtained through investigation at Enterprise Rental Car, correct?
Correct.
You're aware that Mr. Austin had initially stated that the Versa was the car that had picked him up at the airport the day before.
I believe he stated that Baker drove a lot of cars and he wasn't quite sure.
Okay. When was the Versa first recovered by LAPD?
I'm going to object. Assumes facts, not an evidence. It was ever recovered.
I'll allow this.
It wasn't recovered. As far as when did the detectives serve a search warrant on the vehicle? Is that what you're...
When did they identify it as being one of the cars used in the murder?
Again, I don't have that exact date. I'd have to refresh, if you have something can refresh my... I know it was in 2017.
Okay. So I can find that, but my only point was it was within a few weeks of the murder. Is that
I'm
correct?
going to object and misstates the evidence.
So a rule.
My recollection is it may have been longer than that, but I just... I don't know the exact date.
You know
It may have been actually after robbery homicide had the case, which was 5 or 6 weeks. I'm not exactly sure.
Okay. But you came on the case, refresh my memory again, 2017?
Oh no, end of 2019.
2019. By that time, had the Versa been recovered?
Yes.
Okay. So at that time, or any time before then, had anyone at LAPD made an effort to run the license plate of the Versa to determine whether or not it had been stopped for any reason on or near the date of the murder?
I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for anyone else at the LAPD. I ran Mr. Austin. I did not run the vehicle. The vehicle history was already part of the murder investigation. I ran Mr. Austin.
And
I did not locate that.
you didn't run the vehicle.
I did not run the vehicle.
Is there a reason why you did not?
I didn't see a reason at that time to do it. I didn't have any information that Austin had been cited in it. The information was already in the book, and I just didn't rerun it.
Well, you had information that the vehicle had been used during the course of the murder, correct?
Correct, and that information was already in the murder book, is what I'm saying. I didn't have any information that would cause me to rerun the license plate. I didn't rerun the Porsche. I didn't rerun the F-150. I didn't run any license plates involved with any of the cars in this case.
And then we flash forward to the time, how long after that did you submit your request to the district attorney's office to issue a warrant for Mr. Austin's arrest?
Let me be clear that I didn't submit anything. I had a phone conversation with the DA and then additional meetings with the head deputy of major crimes. I just wanted to make sure that was evident. So there's no paperwork or anything like that. It was just you don't have enough, which a lot of times happens in our cases. We'll have verbal conversations.
All right.
That was in 2000, June and July of 2023.
Okay, and that did not result in any contact occurring with Mr. Austin, is that right?
Correct.
So he remained free up in Alaska.
I'm going to object, Your Honor. This is all cumulative.
It is.
Is there a reason at that point that you simply didn't go up there with other deputies to contact Mr. Austin and at least question him and see if he would speak to you about what occurred?
Same objection.
No, that was a different question. I'll allow this.
At that time, I didn't have a warrant for his arrest, and I didn't have authorization to do a Perkins. In my experience, most murderers don't just talk to police officers when you come to their house. I have no reason to really detain him and take him away from his house. He's in his element. I thought the odds of me getting a confession were outweighed by the odds that he was going to choose not to talk to me, and then he would know that he was a suspect in a murder. He could tell the other suspects that were outstanding that we were looking at them, and then my case against Mr. Austin would have basically been blown.
You said other suspects that were outstanding.
Yes.
At that time, you were aware of Mr. Baker as being one of the persons who had committed the murder, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You had suspicions that Mr. Austin was his partner, correct?
Yes.
You had suspicions that Miss Sementilli was involved and she was in custody.
Not suspicions on Miss Sementilli.
She was arrested.
Yes.
Okay.
She was involved.
She was involved on your check and include and include checklist.
Evidence.
Mr. Baker was obviously in custody, correct?
Yes.
And you knew there was a third person who you believed was a good chance was Mr. Austin.
Yes.
So who else were you investigating to have been part of this murder?
Mr. Alfred Birdsong, LaShane Holmes.
And why were they being investigated?
Mr. Birdsong, because his actions again and his cell phone data indicated during critical times of events that took place in the investigation, he was in contact with Mr. Baker and Mr. Austin. We knew they had meetings that he was present during the same time where the defendant, Monica Sementilli, was in Las Vegas with Robert Baker and Christopher Austin, all their phones pinged at the same location.
All these contacts were between Mr. Austin and or Mr. Baker and or Mr. Birdsong.
The phone contacts, yes, but that's if you just look at them individually. If you look at the entire picture, there is contacts during crucial things that are happening, and after there's contact between Baker and Birdsong, Baker and Austin, who we now know they were talking about the crime. Right in the middle of that, then there'll be a conversation with the defendant, Monica Sementilli,
I see.
on crucial events related to this crime.
And you, of course, know what they were talking about.
I do not know what they. Well, I know what. Yes, I do, because I believe Christopher Austin to be credible, and he told me what they were talking about.
Okay. We'll get to Christopher Austin being credible. Okay. At some point, Mr. Austin gets arrested. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that is because someone, after you're off the case, decides it would make sense to run the license plate of the vehicle that you knew for 3 or 4 years was involved in the murder case, the Nissan Versa, right?
Objection argumentative.
Sustained.
Was the license plate of the Nissan Versa eventually run?
Yes.
And who did it come back to? Or did it have any hits on it?
Well, it comes back to Enterprise Rental Car, because that's who owns the car.
By the way, do you know do you have photographs of that vehicle?
The photographs of that vehicle, I believe I testified to yesterday. We have photographs when it was searched, and they're part of the investigative materials that were turned over.
Do you know at that time, are you aware that at times there came a time when rental car companies did not advertise the names of their rental car companies on the vehicle itself for security reasons?
I'm going to object. Assumes facts and non-evidence.
Sustained.
Do you know whether or not the Versa Nissan rental car that was documented as being used in this case contained a decal or some other identifying item on the vehicle that it was an Enterprise rental car?
I do not.
Could you determine that by looking at the photograph?
If there was a photo of a sticker.
Okay. And you have that photograph?
I don't have any materials related to the murder books.
And where would they be?
Those would be at Robbery Homicide Division.
If they exist, they'll be there, correct?
And everything contained within those murder books was turned over to defense counsel and to the prosecution. So.
And the new detectives on the case, Detective Byers and Farrell.
What is the question? Are those the new detectives on the case?
No, I think they are. They've been sitting behind us for like 6 weeks.
Your question.
Your Honor.
It's all right, counsel.
If you could repeat the question
Do you
regarding.
know if these gentlemen took over the case following your retirement?
I would assume so. They've been sitting in court the whole time.
That's what I said.
Exactly.
Okay. You've worked with them, haven't you, since you've returned, just in preparation for this trial?
I've worked with Josh and Corey for years.
Okay. But specifically on the Sementilli Baker case? To catch up and so forth.
Sporadically.
Okay. So did that issue ever come up concerning the ticket that was given to the rental car, the Versa Nissan rental car?
Come up in conversations with Josh and Corey?
Who eventually ran the car for that ticket?
I'm going to object. Assumes facts beyond the knowledge. Calls for speculation.
Sustained on that last round.
Do you know how the information was obtained on the rental car?
Objection same.
Overruled.
I do not.
Okay. But you do know that eventually a warrant was issued for Mr. Austin as a result of the new information involving the rental car being stopped while he was driving it. Is that your understanding?
My understanding. Oh, sorry.
Based on hearsay.
Your Honor, she's
I
testified.
understand it. I'm going to allow it.
My understanding was it was multiple factors, not just the ticket. There was, one of them was the information that Christopher Austin, the information that came from witness Paula McCollum when we were prepping for trial that was supposed to take place in the early part of 2024. We interviewed Paula McCollum, and she told us that Christopher Austin and Robert Baker were in Las Vegas at the same time that Monica Sementilli was in Vegas in June of 2016. That information was verified through cell phone records. That was one of the things. The other thing was cell phone records. Another.
Told you that when?
Your Honor, again, I'm going to ask that you be allowed to finish your answer.
I'm going to allow this interruption.
When we were preparing for trial, it was either at the end of 2024 or the beginning of 2025. We were going through her statement, and she told us that.
So she.
One moment. Now you can finish your answer.
Thank you.
So she gave you a statement.
One moment.
I'm sorry.
Finish your answer.
Thank you, sir. The other element was the seatbelt, that he was cited in the car for the seatbelt violation. Then we had, I learned that financial records were obtained from Christopher Austin, and one of those was for a ticket for the flyaway, which we knew that the second suspect was dropped off in the flyaway. And the last part of the information was financial records that corroborated that Christopher Austin paid for airline tickets with his through his, I believe it was through his Chase account. I didn't have any of those records prior to retiring.
Did this all occur while you were still investigating the case?
It occurred while I was what we call in the LAPD kind of burning time. So I was still active on the books at LAPD, but I wasn't actively working anymore.
So when the decision was made to arrest Mr. Austin, you were no longer an active part of that investigation.
I was retired.
And that occurred in October of 2024. Is that correct?
That's incorrect. When I retired, we were still at that time preparing to go to trial in
No,
2024.
my question has to do with the arrest of Mr. Austin.
Again, Your Honor,
Well,
if the witness
the-
could finish her answer.
It was non-responsive.
Your question is, when was Austin arrested?
Yes, finally arrested. based
October
on-
24.
Okay. You were no longer involved in the investigation of the case at that time.
Correct.
It had been taken over by Detective Farrell and Byers, correct?
Yes, Farrell.
Okay. So you played no active role at that time,
Well, they would.
other than interested in the case, obviously. Fair statement?
No. It's,
What role did you
I
take?
had conversations with Detective Byers, trying to bring him up to speed on the case, and related to the Perkins operation that they were and the importance of following through on the arrest of Christopher Austin, and any help that they needed in relation to that arrest. They knew if I could help in any way, I was available to do that.
Okay. And then the Perkins operation took place, as you know.
Yes.
There was detailed interviewing of Mr. Austin by the detectives and Deputy District Attorney Stagel. You're aware of that?
Yes.
There was an eventual proffer given. 2 proffer dates took place when he was interviewed again, and eventually he got the deal in exchange for testifying against Ms. Sementilli, correct?
An argumentative and
It is.
Eventually he pled guilty,
Yes, in exchange for his truthful testimony
of course.
in this case.
Truthful testimony. Did you hear all the interviews of his truthful testimony during the course of his interrogation, his Perkins conversations and his conversations with Ms. Silverman and Ms. Stagel during the proffer? Did you listen to all those interviews?
same 2 objections.
It's overruled.
I listened to the Perkins and to the interview afters. I did not listen to any of the interviews related to the proffer agreement.
Now, as far as you knew, the purpose of going up there and arresting Mr. Austin obviously was to find and prosecute the second murderer in the case, correct?
Objection argumentative.
Overruled.
I think there were many reasons why
All right,
they went up to.
I'm asking about one. Can we start there?
That was one of the reasons, yes.
And the other reason is to see whether or not you could get him, or the Perkins people could get him, to implicate Miss Sementilli in the murder. Isn't that correct?
To implicate any of the either in custody or outstanding individuals in this case.
Okay. But the only outstanding individual in the case at that time who was in custody and awaiting trial was Monica Sementilli, correct?
Well, correct. In custody, yes.
Right. Mr. Baker had already pled guilty. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
So before, do you know what year it was and month that Mr. Baker pled guilty?
Yes.
When?
The month, I know it was towards the middle, maybe August of 2023
Okay.
or 2020, 2023.
2023.
Yeah.
And you know that he came into court and voluntarily pled guilty to all the charges, had no deal, and was sentenced to the maximum penalty, life without parole, correct?
I know that, yes.
You're also aware that following his plea, he indicated that he would be a witness and was willing to be a witness in the case and tell the truth about what he knew occurred in this case. You know that?
I know he agreed to be a witness in the case.
Okay. And as far as the topic of his testimony or the answers, we're going to be hearing that shortly. I take it you're withholding any judgment as to whether or not he's telling the truth or not until you hear him testify, right?
Well, no, I would say no on that because I've seen his multiple statements and they've changed every time, so I wouldn't know which one to believe. I wouldn't know what version was his truth.
Okay. But then you don't have to make that decision, do you?
No.
Objection argumentative.
Sustained.
That's up for the jury to decide.
Same objection.
Sustained.
Did the arrest of Mr. Baker, not the arrest, but the voluntary entry of a plea, was that something that was unexpected as far as you were concerned in the course of this investigation?
Objection calls for speculation and irrelevant.
Sustained on the second ground.
Isn't it true that following the entry of the plea by Mr. Baker, he indicated that he would be testifying that Ms. Sementilli had nothing to do with the murder? You knew that.
Objection hearsay.
It's irrelevant. Sustained on that ground.
Isn't it true that following learning that Mr. Baker was going to plea without a deal and get on the stand under oath and testify, that LAPD then had even more of an urgency to try and arrest and talk to Christopher Austin to see if he would be able to counter or rebut the testimony of Mr. Baker?
Objection calls for speculation and irrelevant.
It's argumentative. Sustained on that ground.
Again, the murder took place in January of 2017, correct?
Objection
It is.
The arrest of Mr. Baker took place in 2024. I mean, Mr. Austin, 2024.
Objection cumulative.
Sustained.
7 years later, correct?
Same objection.
Sustained.
You knew the defense at all times was urging LAPD in your office to whatever it could to find the identity of the second murderer. Do you remember that?
Objection assumes facts not in evidence.
This was testified to yesterday.
Do you remember getting an email from the defense team asking you and the prosecution for additional evidence relating to the investigation into the possible involvement of Mr. Austin in this case?
I'm sorry. That's irrelevant. Court sustains its own objection.
Objection. It also
I've already
says-
ruled on it, counsel. There's nothing to say.
There was email communications between the defense and the prosecution throughout this case. You're aware of that, is that correct?
Objection. Speculation.
It's irrelevant. Sustains its own objection.
I might have 1 minute, Your Honor, please.
I don't know why he has to be the one to be doing this. The female attorney should really get up there and do this because almost everybody is sick of this attorney and his repetitive questions.
Do you recall, after receiving an email from the defense requesting additional information concerning Mr. Austin, that you replied, "It's perfect. Thank you. Hopefully it slows them down," to Ms. Silverman? Do you recall that?
I don't recall that. I can look at the email.
May I show this on the...
You may not. You may approach the witness and show it.
Did you send that email to the defense attorney in this case?
I sent the email to the prosecutor in the case.
Okay. And we were copied on that?
I don't know how my email was sent to you, but
Well, it was in response to a request for additional information concerning Mr. Austin, isn't that correct?
in the totality of that email, in my recollection, it was in response to discovery.
Yes.
And during that time, I was being overloaded by requests for discovery, requests about not receiving discovery that I knew that was already turned over, things of that nature. And I believe my response was actually of a longer chain that's not incorporated in there, because my memory is that response was that I provided what was requested and that hopefully that would slow down the requests for additional discovery so that I could actually work on the case. That's
Well-
my recollection.
It follows an email to you indicating that you're putting remaining discovery together
Yes.
involving Austin being excluded from the DNA from the passenger seat. That you previously received an account, raw notes, and other discovery.
I'm objecting to reading it.
Sustain.
No foundation.
We were requesting additional discovery regarding Mr. Austin on this case. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And you said it's perfect. Hopefully, it slows them down.
No, this will be allowed. You may read that last part.
I did say that, but as I mentioned previously, my response was in relation to a bigger conversation I was having with the DA in this case related to being overwhelmed with providing discovery before I even sometimes had a chance to figure out how it even related to the case.
And it was discovery relating to Mr. Austin, correct?
It was discovery relating to the case.
Specifically, Mr. Austin and whether or not he could be identified as the second murderer.
That was within that, but it was discovery related to the case.
And that's when you wrote the email, it's perfect, thank you, hopefully it slows them down, to Ms. Silverman, meaning slows down the defense in our discovery requests. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Were they slowed down? In any event, this date is May 9, 2023. Again, Mr. Austin was arrested October 2024. Is that correct?
My
Again.
Sustain.
I can have 1 minute, Your Honor.
Yeah, so now it's getting to the point that the judge is not even waiting for the female attorney to object. He's objecting basically immediately on different things.
Did you ever go to the district attorney's office, ray an outstanding suspect, Alfred Birdsong, and request any arrest warrant for him?
Ray, is that regarding Ray? Is that
Alfred
is your question
Birdsong.
regarding Alfred Birdsong? You said Ray.
No, Ray,
Alfred.
regarding.
Regarding, okay. No. I didn't have the information that was provided from Christopher Austin at that time on Alfred Birdsong.
You knew he was involved in the case.
I highly suspected he was involved in the case based on the phone records and his relationship with Baker, and with Baker going to Vegas on the times that right after the crime, and the fact that he was that they went and saw Birdsong when they were in Vegas in June. But that was information I had after the June visit.
Well, was there a suspicion at some point that Mr. Birdsong could have been the second murderer?
Yes.
So was any attempt to arrest him or prosecute him for this crime?
I did not have the probable cause at that time to arrest Alfred Birdsong. He had been interviewed multiple times in the case and denied any involvement, matter of fact, and I didn't have... My evidence on Mr. Birdsong was lighter than what I had on Christopher Austin when I was told that I didn't have enough, so...
Right. Well, you had information he was down in L.A., that he had many contacts with Baker and Austin at the times that Ms. Sementilli was involved with Mr. Baker, is that right?
I didn't have any information that he was down in L.A. Are you talking about Mr. Birdsong?
Yes.
During the time of the murder?
Yes.
No, I had no information that
Do you
he
know
was...
if the investigation has continued into Mr. Birdsong following the arrest of Mr. Austin in the continuing prosecution of Ms. Sementilli?
Yes.
It calls for hearsay
It's irrelevant.
and speculation.
Just staying on that ground.
You're not involved in any current investigation, in this case active, for any reason?
No, I'm not involved in any active investigation in this case.
One moment. I have a photograph of a pair of shoes, look like tennis shoes. If they could be marked defendants next in order.
625.
625.
Sorry. I said I had 623, but I forgot 623 and
623 is
24
a
from
photo of a
yesterday.
parking lot. 624 is the same.
Yeah.
What's 624?
64 is also photographs of parking lot.
You were on top instead of on the bottom.
Detective Roberts, I'm showing you what's been marked exhibit, offense exhibit 625. Do you recognize what's depicted in that photograph?
Pair of shoes?
Okay. Do you recall, now I know you weren't the initial officer investigating this case or on the scene, but in reviewing the facts of the case with the other officers and so forth, do you recall LAPD taking a photograph of those shoes during the course of its initial investigation the night of the murder?
I'm going to object. It seems facts, not an evidence.
I'll allow this.
I don't recall that.
Do you know if any photographs were taken of any shoes the night of the murder or within a few days of the murder at the Sementilli home?
Not that I recall.
Is this the first time that you've seen a photograph of those shoes?
No, I saw a picture of them, I don't know, prior to my testimony.
In this case?
Yes.
This
Yeah.
week?
Yeah. No, last week.
And under what circumstances did you see it?
Just that it was, I'm not sure if it was information that it was related to the blood evidence on the shoe.
Okay.
There wasn't really any relevance to it. It was just that there was blood evidence recovered from those shoes.
Well, whether it had relevance or not would be an opinion of yours, correct?
Didn't have any relevance that I can remember in my conversation other than it was related to blood evidence.
But can you verify that the shoe was observed in the residence where the murder took place of the Sementilli home that evening or within a day or two?
Same objection. Assumes facts, not an evidence as well.
Sustained.
Do you know if it was booked into evidence?
Don't recall shoes booked into evidence, but
Do you know if that photograph was booked into evidence?
I do not know.
Did you talk to Detective Parshall or any of the other officers on the case when you came on about that shoe and what role it did or did not play in the investigation?
I did not.
You don't remember seeing, well, you were not at the scene for several months before you took part in the investigation, correct?
Years. I didn't get it for over 2 years.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, Your Honor. No further questions at this time.
Any redirect?
Yes. When you came onto the case, Detective Parshall was already deceased, correct?
Yes.
Is it your practice to arrest people for murder based on suspicion?
No, just, at least for me, equally important than arresting somebody for murder is not arresting somebody that is innocent. So I like to have an abundance of probable cause.
Probable cause is the correct standard, not suspicion, correct?
Correct.
And do you arrest people on the chance that perhaps they might confess?
No.
when you were asked questions about the information regarding the defendant being in Las Vegas at the same time as Robert Baker and Chris Austin, when they were staying at Mr. Birdsong's home, could that have been July rather than June of 2016?
That's correct. I know it was the summer of 2016.
And with respect to the financial records regarding Austin, you said those that he had purchased, or you had been told he had purchased airline tickets through his Chase account. Could that have been through Baker's Chase account? That money was funneled to Mr. Austin's credit union account?
Yes. Yes. But I believe he used his own credit card to book the tickets once that money was funneled. That's kind of what I was alluding to, is that there was records that he bought the tickets.
And again, this would be the problem of answering questions based on multiple layers of information, what is commonly referred to as hearsay, correct?
Correct.
Again, you were asked if Baker pled guilty, and you said in August of 2023. Could that have been July 7th of 2023?
Yes.
When you were asked if you expected Mr. Baker to tell the truth, you said you've seen multiple versions of statements he's given. Would that lead you to believe that Mr. Baker has a problem telling the truth?
Objection, call for speculation.
Sustained.
And it's also
Would it be fair to say that Mr. Baker has given numerous accounts of all of the details of his participation in this case?
Objection, call for speculation.
That all overruled.
Yes, coupled with the information gleaned from the overhears that he was willing to lie in order for Monica to get out.
And when you were asked about the email regarding defense's requests, numerous requests for discovery in May of 2023, you said all of that discovery had already been turned over.
Most of it. There was some stuff obviously related to Christopher Austin, because the issue was that it was an open investigation into an unknown suspect, and so there was some concerns about handing over that information, knowing that it could compromise any later operation.
And that same concern about providing information to individuals that could compromise an ongoing murder investigation, is that a concern for any homicide detective? Let's say when Detective Verna was asked those questions, or Detective Gable was asked those questions.
Yes, it's almost never happens that we turn over information in regards to an active investigation on an individual we're planning to do any type of operation on.
And had you received at that point numerous requests through me, based on what the defense was requesting for discovery, that you wound up providing over and over and over again?
Yes.
And again, through those numerous requests for discovery that was duplicative did you then wade through the 260, 70,000 pages of paper along with 8 terabytes of digital data to then again provide all the same information over and over again?
Objection, that's argumentative.
Sustained.
Did you wade through the 260 or 70,000 pages of discovery to
Yes.
find what the defense was requesting for them?
I did.
Did you then wade through 8 terabytes of digital data to find the information that they were again requesting?
I did.
Did you then make arrangements to come to my offices across the street at the Hall of Justice and spend an entire day with the defense team, allowing them to go through your hard drive of all of your case files in order to limit the amount of time that you had to spend duplicating discovery over and over?
I did.
With respect to the overhears, approximately how many hours of recordings are there that you have also provided to the defense?
If I remember correctly, over 60.
You were asked numerous questions yesterday as well as today about what you were looking for with respect to your investigation. If you were looking for additional evidence regarding the defendant and you said that you disagreed, was that because you were aware that in this case there was a conspiracy to murder the victim?
Objection, that's argumentative.
Sustained.
Would it be fair to say that you investigated not just the murder of Fabio Sementilli, but also the conspiracy to kill Fabio Sementilli?
Yes.
And so, did your investigation go to trying to uncover any and all individuals that might have played some role in the conspiracy to kill Mr. Sementilli?
I did.
And did that include any and all statements that might have been made by various co-conspirators relating to either the murder, the reason behind the murder, financial gain, or the cover-up of the murder and conspiracy?
Yes.
Were you present for the testimony of the chief medical examiner for LA County?
I was not.
Were you aware of the testimony that was presented in this court by the chief medical examiner?
Yes.
Were you aware that in his testimony he stated that there was no pattern evidence, no tool marks on any area of the body caused by a specific knife that would allow him to make comparisons to any weapon that might be submitted to the Department of Medical Examiner?
Objection, that hearsay and argumentative.
Sustained.
Do you know what a tool mark is?
Yes.
What is a tool mark?
It's a mark usually left on bone or hard surfaces where you're able to identify what caused that injury. It's I say mark, a tool mark, but it's an injury basically, and based on the analysis of that injury, you can possibly identify the instrument used to cause that injury.
were you aware that the chief medical examiner indicate there were no tool marks?
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation. Foundation. Hearsay.
Sustained on all those grounds.
If there's no tool mark, in your vast experience, is it possible, there's no tool mark or pattern evidence, is it possible to make comparisons to any weapon?
No foundation. Speculation.
Sustained.
Do you have any experience with pattern evidence and tool marks during the course of your career?
I do.
I would limit that to experience relating to human flesh.
Okay.
I do.
Have you submitted, in the course of your experience in investigating homicides, and in multiple cases, cold case homicides, that you've worked on when you ran the cold case unit, in whether you were going to submit items of evidence to either the coroner's department or the crime lab for tool mark or pattern evidence comparison?
Yes, in addition, I attended a 2-day class presented by the chief medical examiner of, I believe at the time she was in Ohio, and she put on a class on tool marks and pattern identifiers, as well as blood spatter and things like that.
Was that the one in Orange County?
This one was in Las Vegas.
Okay. And again, what is your experience with respect to submitting potential weapons for comparison to the crime lab or to the Department of Medical Examiners, tool mark experts, when they had one, for comparison purposes?
Section irrelevant. Speculation.
Sustained.
If you don't have any type of tool mark or pattern evidence, is there any point in submitting a weapon for comparison?
Section argumentative. Speculation. No foundation.
Sustained on the first ground.
You don't, when you testified, when the defense asked you whether any weapon had been ruled out, you said you had no knowledge that any particular item of evidence in this case had ever been ruled out. Is that correct?
Correct.
To your knowledge, was there any comparison done between any weapon or item of evidence that had been booked into evidence on this case, submitted for tool mark or pattern analysis comparison?
There were not, to my knowledge.
So when you said that no item of evidence had been excluded, is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
You were also asked a question, a series of questions actually yesterday, regarding what evidence other than an affair to you proved the defendant was involved in a conspiracy to kill her husband. Do you remember that
Yes.
period of multiple questions yesterday?
Yes.
Did you take into account the admissions that were made by the defendant after her arrest in the back of the black and white vehicle that
There
were...
was no question for that. The mouth is open-ended.
I want to preclude such questioning.
May we approach?
Yes.
defense asked you about the fact that you looked at evidence that only pointed to the defendant having an affair rather than being involved in the murder and conspiracy to kill her husband, you said you disagreed. You said that there was other evidence that included her. Can you tell us what other evidence you're referring to?
All of the, I would say, incriminating statements in the overhears, the use of three-way calling, the pen pal system of sending jail mail to go undetected, the flushing, ripping apart and flushing of jail mail, the statements about wanting to change her name, the purchase of the brand new car, the statements that she was, wanting to have a different life when this was all over, the massive amount of text messaging, phone calling, texting on encrypted apps, deletions of crucial apps, deletions of things on her cell phone when prior to her arrest, running or queries on the computer about collecting life insurance when somebody's murdered. The use of the message feature in the Lifestyle Lounge, using those apps, encrypted apps, and the messaging feature through Lifestyle Lounge during the day of the murder, and then no longer using those things after the murder. The continuous support of Robert Baker after she knowingly has been told that his DNA was found at the crime scene, and then the engagement with Robert Baker in coming up with a story to explain away that evidence. I know I'm missing some, but that's off the top of my head.
Did you also consider the numerous lies to law enforcement in every interview she gave?
Sustained.
In your experience, can you give us an approximation as to how many homicide cases you believe you've been involved in investigating over the course of your career? Your real career, not your TV career.
Hundreds.
When you have a situation where someone's loved one has been murdered, are they generally wanting to give you as much truthful information as they can to assist you in solving their loved one's homicide?
It's argumentative, Your Honor.
It's irrelevant. Sustain on that ground.
If the defendant in this case lied over and over to law enforcement throughout the course of various interviews, while also indicating to them that she wanted her husband's murder solved, would that be behavior that would be consistent with your evidence in this case?
Yes.
Objection, that's argumentative and speculation.
It's overruled.
You were asked yesterday about Robert Baker's history of manipulating women and his numerous convictions for six different violations of the penal code relating to an underage minor. Did you also, in this case, review evidence of communications by Baker with others, as well as conversations in the jail overhears where it was clear that the defendant knew about his prior history and accepted him, as he said, for himself?
Yes.
Let me interrupt. Let's take our morning recess for 15 minutes. The admission applies. See you back here in 15 minutes. Present, jury, and alters are present. Detective Roberts is still under oath. People may continue on redirect.
Detective, when you mentioned the lifestyle lounge application, did you review the defendant's cell phone extraction from item number 119 with respect to that particular website or application?
Yes.
I'll allow it.
Yes.
Approximately how many entries did you find on the defendant's cell phone extract between November of 2016 and June 13th of 2017, the day prior to her murder?
Believe it was 3,800, 3,900.
Maybe 3,997?
I'm sorry, Mr. Wynn, I may have been confused. You said the day prior to her murder?
Sorry, the day prior to the arrest?
Thank you.
Yes, that sounds correct.
3997, okay. Your Honor, we have an 800-page PDF from the defendant's cell phone, a Celebrite report from item 119 regarding these 3,997 entries that have been placed now on the flash drive that I believe has been marked as People's Exhibit 158.
Very
No,
good.
This was not covered on, I'm sorry.
Yes.
It was not covered on cross-examination. Cumulative is already in the record.
Oh.
In the south side of the scope.
Actually, it was one of the items you mentioned in your answer with respect to what was brought up on cross regarding some of the evidence that supports your opinions in this case regarding the murder and the conspiracy, correct?
Could we approach people?
With respect to the Lifestyle Lounge application, did you note whether there were any logins or entries on the defendant's cell phone on the day of the murder through the Lifestyle Lounge application?
Yes.
And did you note how many or what time?
I noted one that stuck out to me that was at 4:47, which was the time that Cyree testified that she was inside the Ralph store. That's also corroborated by the video evidence that there is an entry where she logged into Lifestyle Lounge.
Were there also several other entries on the day of January 23rd?
Yes.
Did you also note any entries on the date of January 28th of 2017, 5 days after the murder of Fabio Sementilli?
I believe there was, it was a different format, which leads me to believe that it was maybe logged.
Sustained.
When you say it was a different format, what did you note?
The address to access Lifestyle Lounge was different in that it was like HTTPS www, which is consistent with logging in through like a desktop computer, a laptop computer on something such as Google or a search engine.
Okay. So basically through a search engine to the actual Lifestyle Lounge website?
Yes.
And how was that different from what you saw on January 23rd?
That is a login through the Lifestyle Lounge application. That is an application on typically on a cell phone or a tablet.
Okay. And then, did you note when the next login was?
There was not another login until June 7th, 2017.
Okay. And between June 7th and a week later, at the time of arrest, June 14th, were there also multiple entries or logins to that Lifestyle Lounge website through a search engine?
Yes.
Did you also note whether or not, from looking at that cell phone extraction, that the Lifestyle Lounge application had been deleted from item 119 at the time of the arrest on June 14th?
I looked into that, but I was not able to come up with that information.
I'm going to show you something. Which did you? No, she just knows. Easy. No.
Do you see the column where there's a red yes
Yes,
in those boxes?
I do.
Let's see if we can make it bigger. Let me ask you, in terms of that column where there's the red yes, is that the column on the extraction through Celebrite that indicates the application and all of the entries were deleted?
Yes.
You were asked whether any search warrant for Baker's apartment occurred during the 4-month period between the time of the DNA results in February 14th of 2017, and his arrest on June 14th. During that same period, there also was no search warrant at the defendant's home or for any of her electronic devices. Is that true?
Correct.
Did you also review a message on the morning of June 14th of 2017 from the defendant to Robert Baker indicating that she was on her computer cleaning up?
Yes.
Now, you were also asked numerous questions about the Target parking lot and what you could observe versus what you could not observe. During the time that you observed someone coming around the front of the defendant's Ford F-150 as she comes into the parking lot and stops, what would be parallel to the Payless store, and then parks to the back of the lot. Can the rental vehicle that Mr. Baker was driving that day, who I believe was circled in that area to the back of the lot that you referred to as an alcove, was his vehicle still in the parking lot at Target?
Yes.
Did you also note that Cy Ray testified that the cellular records put both the defendant and Baker in the Target lot at that same time?
Yes.
You were also asked numerous questions about the drive and the length of time that it takes to travel from the Ralph's Market, which I believe is at the corner of Winnetka and Ventura,
That's correct.
to the residence on Queen Victoria. And you said that it never took you 11 minutes to get home. Why did you point that out to defense counsel? What was the relevance of that?
After that.
Well, it would be irrelevant. The jury determines what the relevance is, not the witness.
Why did you drive that route or the various routes from that location to Queen Victoria numerous times?
Once I determined that it took Monica over 10 minutes, close to 11 minutes to get home, it was my opinion that she deliberately waited.
Objection, Your Honor. This is argument.
I'm going to sustain that, but not on that ground.
Why did you choose to drive that route numerous times?
To see if it would ever take me 11 minutes to get from the Ralphs to the Queen Victoria residence.
And that, in terms of the routes that you drove, that would include any route that she described to law enforcement as well as any other potential route?
Yes.
All right.
I even drove it at one time when school had just let out, which is, if you've ever been to that location, there's a lot of pedestrian traffic, a lot of vehicular traffic, and it takes a while to get through there. And It just never took me more than 5 minutes.
You were also asked whether Cy was wrong with respect to the information he provided to you regarding Christopher Austin's location, and I believe counsel stated that Fayetteville was in Arkansas. Where is Fayetteville?
It's in North Carolina.
And is that the location where, based on your research, as well as Mr. Ray's, that Chris Austin grew up?
It was, and when I thought about it longer, that information was on his Facebook page, which is where that first clue came from. And so I believe that that information was correct as far as what was obtained from what Austin had put in his Facebook page.
When law enforcement does a search of various databases that are utilized for law enforcement use, what type of information is contained within those databases?
It's based, most of the time when you're looking for where somebody lives, it's based on public records, which is utility records, phone records, as far as hardline phones, cell phones. Typically we utilize LexisNexis, which relies on those, the reporting from those companies.
So, in this case, if Mr. Austin indicated that he lived for various times with Robert Baker, his wife, Al Birdsong, and thus was not the name on any of those utilities, the information in the database would also be limited. Is that right?
That's correct, and it's my recollection that once I looked more into the Facebook records and found out that Austin's girlfriend was Chloe O'Connor, that it was through her LexisNexis run that I actually was able to track back where Austin was living, based on what was her records. And then once I found that, then I found Chris Austin's records.
I see. So what Cy gave you in terms of Fayetteville was correct, and until you were able to identify the name of his girlfriend, you weren't able to identify the location where he was living.
Correct.
I believe you also told us that with respect to the Target lot, you were asked questions about not being able to see Baker exit the defendant's vehicle in the Target parking lot prior to the time his rental vehicle drives out of that location. Why is that?
The way that the F-150 was parked the first time when she parks and kind of does that U-turn I was talking about, the passenger door is not visible, and the passenger side of the car is not visible. And as I said, it's towards the very far end of the lot. So as you get farther out, the video gets grainier, as especially when picking up people. And then when she reparks in the middle of the lot again, she's in between. The F-150 is in between cars, so you really can't pick up the movement.
In terms of the location where she's parked at the back of the lot, which side would the front passenger be facing? Towards Target or towards the other shopping center beyond the back of the lot where Mr. Baker was parked?
The other shopping center.
Okay. So the side of the vehicle that was facing the target lot and the surveillance cameras would be the driver's side?
Yes,
Okay. And again, we're talking about the Ford F-150, correct?
correct.
You told us that there was over 60 hours approximately of overhears in the lockup, the court lockup facilities in Van Nuys and in Los Angeles. Did you review all of those recordings?
Not allowed.
Multiple times.
At any point in time, did you ever hear the defendant talking to Robert Baker, expressing that she hoped law enforcement would find the real killers of her husband?
Sustained.
At any point in time, did she ever say anything about hoping law enforcement would find the people responsible for killing her husband?
No.
At any point in time, did you hear her express any concern about the people who killed her husband still being at large?
No.
I have any questions.
Anything further about this?
And at no time, Detective Roberts, did you ever hear her in those hundreds or whatever the hours were of overhears confess to Mr. Baker that she was involved in the murder of Fabio Sementilli, did she?
I'm going to check. Cumulative.
The world.
Direct confession, I did it?
Yes.
Correct. That never happened.
Now, you gave some testimony concerning a difference in the format that you used for the Lifestyle Lounge examination on January 28th. Is that what you said?
A different way to, a different application to access the, it appeared to be a different application. One was through the app and one was through directly through the website.
And that was, you got involved in that during the course of your preparation for the trial here, correct? You learned about that.
Actually, that came about, yes, as I was prepping, and the question last night before we recessed was, how do I know Monica wasn't out in the Ralph's parking lot smoking a cigarette and things like that? And I testified that I know she wasn't on her phone. And then I thought, I better make sure that that's correct, that she wasn't on her phone. So I had, with the assistance of one of the clerks at the DA's office, help me with the records and actually determined that she had accessed Lifestyle Lounge, but it was, so she had utilized her phone, but was when she was inside the Ralph's. And then that led to a further investigation into the Lifestyle Lounge and her deletion of the app.
Yeah, but none of that meant she couldn't have been smoking a cigarette when she left the Ralph's Market or in the car or at any time she was out of view of the camera, right?
Correct. That's just how it led me to that investigation.
And when you were actually investigating the case, you never noted the Lifestyle Lounge incident as you do now, back when you were the actual investigator regarding January 28th.
Well, I knew about Lifestyle Lounge and some communications that was made through Lifestyle Lounge. I didn't know the extent of the amount of messages that needed further analysis and about the deletion.
But once again, the longer somebody, Monica Sementilli, waited to get home, if she was involved in a conspiracy to kill her husband, the more time the killers would have to leave the residence without being detected. Doesn't that remain a fact?
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
The longer that Ms. Sementilli, Monica Sementilli, waited, if what you're saying is correct, longer than the normal time to get home. The longer she waited, the more time it would give the killers to leave the location, correct?
I think what's correct is it would give Monica the appropriate amount of time to not get home while the killers were still there.
Okay, which would, obviously, if she was involved, would be one of her goals, correct?
Yeah, I would assume.
And if she wasn't, and if she was involved, she certainly wouldn't want her daughter walking in on the murder and report it immediately to 911 as she did. Isn't that a fair statement?
Based on the evidence of this case, I would say, I would hope that that would be true, but that just doesn't seem to be true to me in this
Okay.
case.
You've got somewhat of a bias here. Would you agree, in fact, that you're the investigating officer in the case in which Monica Sementilli is being tried?
Yes, because I wouldn't be testifying had I not believed that
Okay.
she was guilty of the crime in which
Of
she
course.
was charged for.
I sure hope not.
Right.
But the point you're making is you have no explanation for Monica Sementilli being on the phone with her daughter Bella 5 or 10 minutes before she gets to the house and doing nothing to prevent her from arriving at the house almost right at the time the murder is taking place. And if she was a conspirator in the murder, logic tells you she would have had Bella show up later. She could have met with her. She could have had lunch with her, coffee, go to Starbucks, and make sure neither one of them walked in on the murder, and more important, the murderers had time to escape. Isn't that a reasonable possibility?
Objection calls for speculation
It's
as well
argumentative.
as
It's argumentative.
argumentative and compound.
Sustained.
Well, you gave some speculation why you thought Monica showed up right at the time of the murder, correct?
I sustained the objection.
Based on
Okay.
argumentative.
And you did not initially include Bella in the in your maps to see how far she was from the doctor's office to where she had the interview from her residence, did you?
Did I draw a map and have her?
Did you?
Sorry.
Well, you said you drove the route from Ralph's to the home. How many times?
Multiple times. It was, I would have to say, 10.
Okay. Did you ever drive the route of Bella Sementilli from her school to her interview to the doctor's office, eyeglasses, and how far then that doctor's office was to the residence?
No, Bella Sementilli was not a suspect in this case.
And you thought it was irrelevant as to whether or not Monica Sementilli did or did not prevent or try to prevent her daughter from walking in on a murder that you're saying she had planned. That was irrelevant to you.
I don't think it was irrelevant. It was just not supported by the evidence.
Well, first you get the evidence and then you analyze it, correct?
Well, I had the...
Was that just correct? That's my question. First
Well,
you get the evidence, the facts, and then you analyze it, correct?
In this case, I had the evidence was there, so that's not correct in this case because the evidence was there for me to analyze.
You had the times, right? All the times. You had Fabio Sementilli, even evidence proving he was alive at 4:37 that afternoon, correct?
Correct.
You had the times that the killers jogged up the avenue and
Correct.
entered the home, correct?
Yes.
You had the time they left, correct?
Yes.
And then you had the times that Monica Sementilli and Bella Sementilli arrived at the house, correct?
Correct.
And you did a great deal of efforts, a great deal of time to determine 10, 11 times how long it would take Monica to get to the house if she drove immediately from Ralph's and did nothing in between, correct?
Yes.
You took no consideration as to whether she stopped along the way, had a cigarette, ran into somebody, listened to something on the radio, had something wrong with her car, nothing like that. You had no way of knowing if anything interfered with her arrival at home when she left the Ralph's parking lot.
Objection cumulative.
Same.
And most important, she was out of view from any cameras from the moment she left the Ralph's store with her package until she showed up at the house, correct?
Cumulative.
Same.
Now, when it came to the evidence that you were just reviewing with Ms. Silverman as to why you believed Ms. Sementilli was guilty, what you would say in the include side, correct?
Yes.
Did you take, and you said, well, Mr. Baker lied hundreds or tens of hundreds of times, I don't know, 10 times, 20 times, on the overhears. You felt you caught him in many lies on there, correct?
Object the state's evidence.
Total.
You took that into account, what you heard on the
I
overhears?
believe that what I said, that he said in the overhears that he would lie and say he would take the blame. He'd go, he'd take the blame, that he would lie. That was my testimony.
And
But I do believe there was lies on the overhears.
Sure. And the gist of his testimony we're saying is he would say he did it even if he didn't do it. He would lie and say he did it if he didn't do it to help her, right?
That's not the gist that I got. The
Okay.
gist was, if you take it in the context of the entire overhear, he said, if this shit goes bad for us, which right there is suspicious to me, I'll lie, I'll go down, I'll say, it was me. You need to go home.
Have you heard him testify under oath here?
No, I have not.
But you've heard Mr. Austin testify under oath.
I was not here when Mr. Austin testified.
Did you hear Mr. Austin give the proffers when he was under oath? Mr. Austin, I'm sorry. Did I say
Objection
that?
cumulative.
It is.
Do you know how many times Mr. Austin, the prosecution's star witness, lied to the police and to the court and to the jury in this case?
Objection argumentative.
Sustained.
And as you know, Mr. Baker has not testified yet, correct?
Objection asked and answered.
Yes, sustained.
So the people who would judge his testimony will be the jury, not you, correct?
The people that'll...
Objection argumentative.
Sustained.
Just a couple more things. When you reviewed the case early on, were you not aware from reviewing Detective Gabriel and Partial's notes that they had located a shoe with a drop of blood on it that belonged to Mr. Baker?
Objection assumes a fact, not an evidence.
I'll allow this question.
Your Honor, then I would ask to approach.
All right.
I'm seriously wondering if the lady testifying right now is going to be on the stand all day. That would make for 2 very long days in a row.
Detective Roberts, do you know Detective Ryan Verna?
I do.
Is he a prior detective on the case
Yes.
before you got on?
Yes.
Did you read any reports of his indicating that on February 21st, 2017, he went to the Sementilli residence and took various photos of the porch, the garage, Julie, and of Monica's shoes?
I have a general recollection of that. There's a lot of documents, but
And if he did so and he took a photo of the shoes, and that photograph would be in evidence or in the possession of LAPD, correct?
I'm going to object as soon as facts and evidence.
I'll allow for habit and custom.
Can I quote you on it?
There's no question
That has not been answered.
I would hope that it was in the investigative files.
Let me show you this photograph here and see if that refreshes your memory as to something that was engaged in by Detective Verna before you became part of the case.
I don't recall seeing these photos. I don't recall seeing it.
Okay. But if they were taken, they'd be part of the LAPD Quan, or in some way you would expect in evidence.
Yes.
Not in this case necessarily, but in the possession of LAPD. Is that correct?
Yes. The digital files on this case were like 8 terabytes or something, and so there's just so much documentation in this case. I just don't have a memory of seeing that photo.
Very well. And again, when it came to this woman named Paula McCullum,
Yes.
did you have a role in the investigation of her?
I'm going to object as soon as facts and evidence.
Sustained.
Also cumulative and beyond the scope.
Oh, well, I would go over again all the events in Mr. Austin's ride or trail from 2017 to today, but the point is, he was known to LAPD as early as 2018. Is that correct?
I'm going to object again. Cumulative.
Sustained.
Was not arrested to 2024.
Same objection.
Sustained.
moment, if I may, Your Honor. Ms. Roberts, while you were one of the investigators on this case, didn't you interview Paula McCollum?
Objection.
The question, I'm sorry, say it again.
Didn't you interview Paula McCollum?
Objection. Cumulative.
Well, that question is overruled.
I did not.
Did you have any contact with her person to person?
I don't believe I did.
So your only knowledge of her would have come from other reports prepared by other detectives?
Yes, and the conversation that the district attorney had when she was preparing for the trial that was supposed to take place in early 2024.
And was Ms. McCollum a topic of that conversation?
No, she had been subpoenaed. It's my understanding that she had been subpoenaed because we were gearing up to go to trial, and she called to try and work out travel arrangements, and in that discussion about when she was going to be needed for court and stuff, there was a discussion about Austin.
But she is not, as far as you know, going to testify in this case for the prosecution.
I believe she was subpoenaed.
Okay? You believe she's still under subpoena?
I'm going to object irrelevant.
Sustained.
Calls for speculation.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Anything further by the people?
No.
Thank you. You may stand down, and you are excused. You may call the next witness.
The people, as the court knows, are now going to rest subject to the introduction of the evidence.
Thank you. Those are magic words. It means I got to go to work. So what I'm going to do is let you go to lunch early. The evidence implies not discuss this case either among yourselves with anyone else or form or express any opinions on the cause finally submitted to you, which will be some time. But have a good lunch. I'll see you at 1:30. If I can have counsel remain, please.
All right, so they said 1:30 yesterday, and they didn't come back till after 2. So with that and the fact that they said it's going to be a short day, I am going to log off of here. And if there's anything of importance that we miss, I'll play it later. But I'm going to hop over to the Stacey Rodriguez trial because they have a verdict and nobody's there yet, so we haven't missed anything. All right, thank you for watching.